I have battled with 5 stages of grief after losing my daughter Mobese through misdiagnosis. My name is Maryanne Njambi, and this is my story.
If death is sudden, grief is not necessarily greater than it would have been with an anticipated death, but it may be harder to cope with because it is so disruptive. Maryanne, a single mother of 2, was born and raised in a loving and close-knit family of 6 in Nairobi, Kenya.
I met my firstborn's dad. She was called Mobese. I met him when we were 20. You know, when you're 20, you're young and fresh. So we started dating. Then within the 2 years, okay, at 22 now, that's when I got her. So he threw an engagement party for me and her when I was 2 months pregnant. So I got her when I was 22. So all that while, she was very healthy. In fact, she was 3.5 kgs. She was a very healthy girl, chubby, happy. Her dad traveled to the UK. So he stayed I waited for him for 5 years. Then I met now my second-born's dad. She's called Faith. Now for him, we started dating, and after 6 months we did a wedding. Then we just raised her normally. He took also Mobese in, that's the stepdad. And then we went on well. They were very healthy. They were soulmates. You know, the way you're seeing your daughters, they are coping, they are playing together, they're discussing. So they had a good childhood, I must say. I was happy to have 2 girls, you know, the excitement. You're playing with them, you're dolling them up, and then they had different personalities. They're not very girly, but I used to doll them up. But eventually, at a point, they started making their own decisions. I want to dress like this, I want to dress like this. But of course, it was enjoyable.
My life with my sister Mobese was fun. It taught me a huge lesson. She was kind of like my second mom, because you know, most of the time my mom used to go to work. So it was just me and her, you know, a little comfort zone, you know, yeah. So she was like my best friend. I could tell her anything, yeah, about boys. We could talk about boys, obviously. That's what sisters do. Yeah, so we'd vibe well.
Life keeps us on our toes as a teenager, but it's a time teenagers should enjoy. But for Mobese, life was different.
So at 15, she had attended a church camp, which had started, it lasted for a week. During that duration, when she came back, she came with a cough. Then we were like, hey, this cough is not going away. But we assumed, you know, that you can just see, it's a cough. So we went to a chemist, we bought drugs. They treated it with antibiotics and cough syrup and some other drugs. Later, it wasn't going away. But we were like, okay, maybe it's just... It didn't go away completely, but we took action when she drastically lost weight. Now she was 40 kgs, 40 kgs and a 15-year-old, that is alarming. She really lost a lot of weight.
This was the beginning of her long, intensive medical journey.
So we were advised to do a sputum test and x-rays. Then she was diagnosed with TB, lung TB. You know, TB has many types of, there's bone TB, there's skin TB. So we started with treatment immediately. She took drugs for the first 6 months. Then in the 6 months, she didn't recover. So they changed some drugs and she continued for 6 more months. You see, that's a total of 1 year. Shocking on us, we were told she's not supposed to continue for exceeding 6 months.
Hitting rock bottom with the treatment journey, Maryanne was devastated with Mobese's deteriorating condition. They went back to the hospital and another course of treatment was administered.
After the 1 year, now another condition came up. It's called aspergillosis, which is damaged lungs. It shows how her lungs were filled with holes. So now you see, now we started another treatment. So now the TB drugs are free. We went now from free to very expensive. Aspergillosis is very expensive. And now we were told we are managing, because now that's a lot of damage. The lungs were filled with holes, so we're just managing, stuff like that. So between 15 years and 20, when she passed, she was taking aspergillosis drugs throughout, continuous. After she was 19, late 19, before she was 20, now she developed another condition in December. That was in December 2019. It's called GBS. So it's like the damage now of nerves. Her nerves were damaged. She couldn't walk, she couldn't sit, and her spine was also damaged. So she was also using Pampers. She had wounds and everything. So even when she was going, she was just finished. You can't even see any meat. So you see, it's condition after condition after condition.
Despite Mobese's jovial and encouraging nature, the disease took a toll on her, casting doubt in her recovery.
So she was very heartbroken. Even during the treatment, there's a time she was like, I won't take the medicines. But I was like, you just take them. We are here with you. So every day we make sure she eats well. And sometimes she'll have nausea, sometimes she'll have dizziness, sometimes she'll have stomach upsets. These drugs are not fun. They have so many side effects. So it started with that, the challenges, the difficult times, and then sometimes even her, she's not in the mood. Then you have to be there. And then we dealt with a lot of stigma. When she was alive, in between the 15 and 19, there sometimes we had to go to hospital. So we are walking with her, guys are staring, she's crying, she's like, then when we go for the TB, every time they have to test for HIV. Then you see she's broken, she's like, gosh, the doctor thinks I have HIV. So I used to encourage her, no, it's just a protocol they follow. So, and then at that point, there's a time she used to say I don't want to go to hospital. People are staring at me, people are laughing. There's a time she even fell on the road because now her knees were weak. Then people are laughing, you're like, wow, people can kill you before your time is up. So those were the challenges. And then during the stage of the TB, now we stopped from the government. We had to seek now a chest specialist to handle it himself. So he's the one who was directing us, like, this is what you do, this is what you do. And then sometimes you could tell, he's telling us, this one won't make it. But he's just trying to encourage her, you just take. There's a time she was so underweight, he had to give her steroids at least so that she can deal with the stigma. So she gained a little weight, at least you could see she's healthy. In fact, that's the time we had done a photo shoot. She had turned 20. So I did for her a nice shoot, a nice photo shoot. We did a very nice photo shoot, the three of us, me, her, and Faith. So she was happy, at least. In fact, she's the one who insisted.
Mobese's kind spirit reflected in her pain, even looking out for her mother as she took care of her.
What consoles me is she always said God is there. And then she was grateful. She was like, Mom, it's okay. I can see what you're doing. When you're working hard, when somebody acknowledges it, you feel motivated. So you're like, oh, I'm not doing it in vain. So Faith is 14 years. She has been there with me, watching her sister in pain. She encouraged us. When she was with us, she used to hold fellowships. So every day she was like, make sure 7:30 p.m. sharp, you have finished everything you're doing, you come, we hold a fellowship. So in the fellowship is she says we seek forgiveness, testimonies, what we are grateful for. Then we sing hymns, Bibles. So it's like she brought us closer to God. In fact, I used to tell her she's a job of her generation, just to encourage her, because she was always in pain. But I used to also be encouraged when she said, she's the one in pain, but she's not complaining. So I also learned not to complain, yeah?
Mobese's medical situation affected Maryanne both emotionally, physically, and financially, draining her at the end.
There's a time I used to have an 8-to-5 job. I used to work as a sales girl for office showrooms. I've actually worked in almost all the showrooms in Mobese Road. But the latest one I was working was in tile and carpet. So my performance started becoming very low, then the bosses were very concerned. I was even fired at a point. But I was like, you see, I'm trying to look at the positive. It happened for a reason. Because it was 8 to 5, I wasn't spending so much time with the girls. So I was, sometimes I could even get home even at 9 p.m. So in that journey, I sought to do something free, just something freelance. At least I can spend more time with the girls. So I started plus size modeling. That's just wearing clothes for fashion houses. They take pictures and they use your images, then they pay you. So I was like, wow, you know, that's not an everyday thing. So they call you for jobs, they call you, then you go, you might go today, tomorrow you don't go. So it was consistent. But when I took a break, things started slowing down.
While Maryanne was clearly concerned about Mobese's physical and emotional health, she neglected her own mental and emotional well-being, focusing on her daughter. Maryanne's story continues after the break. This week on Crosstalk.
For me, my challenge is the people. Who do we have as our governors of this system?
It is not possible to do governance without God. You can't. You will fail woefully.
We are looking at faith principles and governance. Where do these two marry?
That's this Sunday at 8 p.m. That evening, things looked normal, despite Mobese being in agonizing pain. However, at daybreak, things took a turn for the worst.
You know that shock, you're like, Then I was asking myself, is this the way death looks like? Because I've never seen death with my eyes. But we saw her, you know, I had bought her a long chair she used to lie on. So that's where she took her last breath. In fact, she was trying to catch breath, but it was so traumatizing. And that time you don't know what's happening because she's gone through such situations. She used to use an inhaler. So we thought, okay. But that night it was, actually she passed on at 6 a.m. It was on a Wednesday, on 25th March 2020. We called an ambulance when she passed that day. So he tried to resuscitate her. There was a small pulse, so we had a little hope. But eventually he was like, you better call the hospital. So me, I wasn't even talking to him. In my mind, I'm like, why is he saying we call the hospital? She never used to close her eyes when she was alive. So that time her eyes were closed. Although it's embalming, but still, we saw her for the first time, she's closed her eyes. So at that time, at least, I was consoling myself to say she's peaceful, she's sleeping, but it never goes away.
Amidst the COVID-19 pandemic, Maryanne had to adjust to the new normal.
He pronounced her dead. Then we took a burial permit from the police. Then after that, it was a process. Now the heirs came to take her body. That time, when you're seeing her, now they're taking the body to the heirs. That was, I think, I was broken the most. Because now you're like, this is now a lifeless body. She's not there anymore. Now the house became so quiet. You're like, everybody was quiet. So after when the heirs came, we went now to the morgue. At some point, the dad's side they chipped in also. So they bought her a dress because they are Catholics. They bought her a white dress, like a Christian. It looks like that. So that stage of seeing the body, it was so tough.
No parent is prepared for a child's death, as parents are simply not supposed to outlive their children. Maryanne had to be strong for faith as they laid Mobese to rest.
So we buried her on Saturday. There were very few people who attended, but still even watching it going down there. But I think it's easier to see someone taking their last breath than hearing they passed and they did what. As we saw her whole process of sickness, of everything up to the passing.
While bereavement is stressful, whenever it occurs,
even I wasn't praying. I wasn't like, why should I pray? like to someone who doesn't listen. Like, I must say at first I was bitter, because I was asking God, like, I wish I could have just miscarriaged instead of seeing her growing to a young woman. Then she just slips off your fingers. But in the journey, I just sought God. And then you have to have a good support system. Like, I must say the church was a very big support system, my church. They came through spiritually, financially during the funeral. And they were there actually, even when she was alive. She had joined a youth group. So they used to do so many things, and they used to participate. So they were there for her when she was alive and when she passed. So I think they made the journey also easier. You know, I believe in prayers. So they prayed a lot for us, and I think that's why we are still here. Although there's a time I also had fear. Like, you see, when you're left with trauma or losing one child, you're left with trauma. Like, there's a time she's sleeping, I'm checking whether she's breathing. It's not easy. Like, time I call her many times, Faith, she's not responding. I go to see, like, if she's breathing. So the trauma is there, but at the same time, I'm still praying for God to remove the fear, because the fear can interfere with your blessings, and it's not from God. Fear is from the devil. So I'm just praying for positivity, peace, and of course happiness, because Mobese claps for us whenever we are happy.
When she left, I'm not going to lie, I'm still trying to adjust to the new life, because right now I don't feel more open to anyone else like her. You know, she was like my bestie, you know, soulmates. Now I'm just, okay, I started being depressed, having anxiety, even I couldn't like socialize with people that much because of that. So it traumatized me. I started having nightmares and stuff, but I pray a lot and it helps. Okay, I'm not really that close to God anymore. You know, it's because I'm human. Yeah, you know, hardships and stuff. But I'm trying my best, you know, not to be angry anymore, because there's a reason she went. She was in pain and stuff. But yeah, I can say I'm better than I was. Yeah, I cry less. I used to cry a lot. Yeah, you know, lock myself in my room and just scream and shout. But now I think the anger is just reducing, because, you know, having someone you love the most in the world, like you saw a future with her, we were like, let's give birth at the same time. Let's have twins and be besties. But you know, now all that crashed before my eyes after I saw her losing her breath. But you know, we don't ask God why. There's always a reason.
In her stages of grief, Maryanne relied on other people for moral support.
Like, there's a lady who told me she lost her mom and son in a span of 1 year. Then when she asked God, God told him, I had lent you your son, now I've taken him. So she was telling me there's nothing I can do. Like, our children are even borrowed. God can just decide. And even me, myself, our life is borrowed. It's not ours. So when she lost, in those experiences, listening to people, there's a lady who lost her brother through aspergillosis. So at some point I was like, maybe if she was in hospital, she could have been alive. But as she told me, her brother was in hospital. He had been having so many tubes and still he passed. So you see, the journey was easier when I started talking to people, their experiences. I was like, wow, okay. Then you see you're not alone. So now that's how they accept. It wasn't easy to accept because the denial was more than not denial, bitterness with God. Now that's when I started accepting slowly. And then you're seeing for yourself, like, anyway, she's not coming back. And then there's a time she appeared in my dream, actually. I saw her, then she was like, anyway, Mom, I'm in a better place. Just be happy. And I'm like queen. I woke up when she was about to say the queen's name. But she says like a queen in the Bible, you see. So those are the things that console me every day. I'm like, she's not suffering. And then we don't have nightmares. You know, like most people, maybe she can come, then you're having nightmares, you can't sleep. You're seeing images like black things. But us, it's so peaceful. And the chair she passed on, it's still there. So there's peace. that's when the journey now is easier, because there are no things holding you. You don't have fear anymore. You don't have you're not hungry anymore. So that's why the journey is easier.
Individuals and families have many capabilities and abilities that allow them to respond to interpersonal loss.
So we started just spending more time with Faith. We even started doing TikTok videos together just for distraction. We know it won't go away, but you have to find a distraction because you're confined in one place and you can actually lose it very easily. You can lose your mind. So we had to find things that can keep us busy.
So we just comforted each other, tried to talk to each other and tried to cheer each other up with the smallest things, like making TikToks, which is not my thing, but it's her thing, so I'd like to make her happy. Yeah, and singing, we also love singing, yeah, together.
I started her in a program of modeling, so just to keep her busy. Then at the same time, she's just proving herself, like she won a pageant and it was her first time. So the small wins, you know. And then we also did a photo shoot with her, mother and daughter shoot.
So me and her, for fun, we used to play dress up. Like, you know, Doc McStuffins, the cartoon. So we used to play doctor. She was the patient, I'm the doctor. So a long time ago, I actually had a dream of becoming a doctor. But now, you know, she was actually a poet. She loved poetry. And now, you know, when I look at her old poet book, now I'm trying to, you know, continue, and I'm taking notes on how to become one day. So these days, I'm into writing and poetry and literature also. Is actually my favorite subject in high school ever since I came to witness it. So I love reading novels, her older novels, yeah. And also, I just love writing. Like, I make my own stories in my head, yeah.
Mobese's legacy lives on in Maryanne and Faith.
So I'd like people to know, like, she had so many problems, but she was so spiritual and very close to God. And I feel sometimes like God used to speak to her. Because there's a pastor who used to she came to visit her with the youth friends. So the pastor was like, do you know Mobese is there sleeping with God on that chair, but you are not seeing him, how she's saying. So I believe she was tight like this with God. I think they even used to talk. And then there's a pastor who revealed to me like she had an encounter with God. So you see, these things are so deep. How she knew. But of course she can't tell me, Mom, you know, one day I'll leave you. I think she knew. There's a look she used to give me. I'm like, why are you looking at me like that? She's like, no, it's okay. Then she used to say, God is there. That's her mantra. And that's what keeps pushing me. And yeah, if something doesn't go well, if you're feeling low, because sometimes you'll wake up happy, sometimes you're sad, sometimes you're... Then I just tell myself, Mobese would say, God is there. So she wanted just God a lot. And then even listening to her songs, she used to listen. And especially the last days, these God songs, very spiritual songs. So she was very close to God. That's what I'd want people to know. And that's why we are comforted, actually, to know that she's in a better place.
And also she had a dream of becoming a TB ambassador. And because I don't want to see anyone else go through what she was going through, I'd like to find a way on how to do that on behalf of her, you know. Just make her happy, at least put a smile on her face, yeah, to do what she wanted to do.
If you're going through something, just take it easy. I think you should take a breather first. Because if you see these people who talk to themselves on the road, it started with somewhere, things piling up. Then you're just talking to yourself. You know, that's depression. And then the ones committing suicide. So just take it easy, take a breather, as a long breather, even if it's 2 weeks, 2 months, but take a breather and have a talk with God and just seek Him. You can get through anything. If I'm here and I watched my daughter taking her last breath, you can just go through anything.
You know, as teenagers, right now, you know, this generation is depressed and anxious and stuff. I just like to tell them, don't go through stuff alone. You know, I know like some of us are bitter and we don't really like praying. Like when we hear prayer, we're like, no, God doesn't listen to me. God's not there. I won't lie, I've been there. You know, I'm not perfect to say that, you know, read the Bible, pray, no. Just take your time. No, God will never leave us, it says in the Bible. I know sometimes you feel alone, like you feel like God is not real. You're talking to yourself, but that's not true. I've been there. So I like to tell them, don't go through stuff alone.
I would like to encourage someone going through tough situations. Like it's not your battle to fight. Like God, like as I said, our lives are borrowed. So leave it to God and just place yourself in God's, just trust Him. Whatever happens, play your part and let God play His. Because sometimes you can hold on to something so much, but you can't keep it. So if you're going through diseases, through financial problems, trust God completely.
Most people assume that dealing with the loss of a child immediately following the death is the most heart-rending nightmare. What they do not realize is that the heart-rending nightmare continues. This new reality is by far one of the most trying. We hope Maryanne's story has inspired you. If you have a story you would like to share with us, kindly text us on 20316 or WhatsApp us on 0786 316 316 or email us on thisismystory@familymedia.tv and we will get back to you. Fresh, insightful, and in-depth stories from current affairs, opinion, inspiration, lifestyle, church-related articles, and so much more on www.familynews.today. Insights at your fingertips.